It was announced this week that WWE officially bought out Evolve, which is a promotion. If I remember, Richard, it's based on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, it's run by Gabe Sapolsky, who used to run Ring of Honor and also learned under Paul Heyman at ECW.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's based in Philadelphia.
Okay. And I think for maybe some people who don't know too much about Evolve, they got a little bit of a touch of that within, was it last July? They had their 100th show that was live on the WWE Network, and that was kind of cool.
Which I watched.
Yeah, they had some NXT superstars appear on.
Paul Heyman was there.
Yeah, and it was a great showcasing for them. So I think that was
because it was at the ECW arena.
Yeah, so it was on the WWE Network, and I think for a lot of people that's where they kind of got to hear what Evolve was. But yeah, so this week it was announced that WWE officially bought out Evolve, and I think this is coming, if I remember, Richard, obviously with the pandemic going on, there's a lot of financial issues going on for a lot of these wrestling promotions to stay open and during these tough times, and unfortunately Evolve, because of that, I guess they decided to just sell everything to WWE, and this has actually been rumored for a while now. Am I right? Like, I think it's been in
for a little bit. I believe they were in some financial trouble because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Basically, I believe that they had reserved a building and a space WrestleMania weekend that they couldn't get a refund on.
Oh no!
And they had all these rooms and space sorted out and had a deposit on it, and they couldn't get their deposit back. Oh, so Gabe Sapolsky got himself into debt because of that. Yeah. And I think originally WWE was, clearly they want that library because you've got Matt Riddle wrestled there, and Drew Gulak, and I think Darby Allin wrestled there for a bit.
Timothy Thatcher.
Timothy Thatcher. So there's been a
Shotzi
ton of
Blackheart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a good library.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I think Evolve's been around for about 10 years, started in 2010, and from what I was reading earlier, it originally started out kind of as like the USA version of Dragon Gate, and they partnered with Dragon Gate, and they would put on shows, and for their American wrestlers on their roster was able to perform here, and it was a good partnership they had, and then like within the last few years, they've had this working relationship with WWE, and a lot of their signees over on NXT, they I think got their start with Evolve. So it was kind of cool that NXT and Evolve had this working relationship together. And so all their new signees that they had over at the Performance Center, they would send them off to work these Evolve shows. And even more recently, they would have some of the other big name NXT talent show up at these Evolve shows and do signings. I think I saw before the pandemic, they had like Ciampa and then Undisputed Era, Adam
Street
Cole.
Profits.
Yeah, so they all would occasionally do appearances there. So it was a great, I think, for a wrestling fan, how awesome is that you go to an Evolve show and you see the Evolve talent, but then occasionally you'll see someone from NXT, a big name, show up there and be able to meet them, and some of them will even wrestle. So it was a great, like, I guess you could call it training ground for NXT. So maybe
it's a training ground for the training ground.
Yeah, that's the thing. And so it was really cool because for NXT, so if they sign someone and maybe they're not, quote, maybe ready for TV yet, they're still very green and they need to just work in front of a live crowd, they would send them over to Evolve. And so you got people on the Evolve roster versus these like NXT signees working together, putting on matches. And yeah, it was a great, I think, business for NXT. And so unfortunately to hear that Evolve might be going away, there's a lot of speculation. We don't know yet what's the future hold. The big thing...
Well, we do know that we're going to get a new library added to the WWE Network, which will be nice, especially for newer content.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I think for WWE, anytime they buy out another promotion, I think for them, it's obviously a long-term investment. I think for them, they obviously, as you just said, they want the library of all those matches that they had and that stuff they can easily just throw up on the WWE Network. And just another selling point for people why they need to subscribe to the network and see early matches of guys and gals that are on the NXT or even on Raw and SmackDown now. So that's the thing for them. They're just they're always looking for stuff to add to the WWE network. And I think for them, it's really exciting because I think of the article I read, I think it's like over half of people who appeared on Evolve at one point or another now work for WWE, either NXT, Raw, or SmackDown. So for them, I'm just thinking, future, stuff down the road when they're putting together like these hype packages, these video packages of these wrestlers, they can just tap in now into the Evolve library and have more content to add to it. I think, we joked in the past before, you look at like AJ Styles, like when they're doing these video packages for AJ when he first signed with WWE, they didn't have a lot to work with. They had some early stuff in WCW, but then all his TNA stuff, they had nothing to use. So they were using all more recent clips of AJ Styles. But so with that being said, like anyone who's appeared in Evolve that's in WWE now, they got a ton more new footage to work with. So I'm excited to see what might happen. The reports are saying that WWE could potentially still put on Evolve shows. They will just run it themselves. Or they can also turn it into like WWE Network specials, which I would be excited for. But Tommy, you were telling me actually yesterday, we were talking about this.
Yeah.
So what are some of the ideas or things you think what WWE should do with it?
Well, like you said, I think WWE should make Evolve the new developmental and transfer all the wrestlers who are still training at the Performance Center that haven't been on NXT television to the new Evolve developmental brand.
Okay.
And let NXT become like a legit third major brand by letting NXT tour across the country whenever that happens for live events and television tapings, in like an 1,000 to 5,000 seat range for venues to want to compete with AEW while still having that small crowd feel to the outside of TakeOver and Worlds Collide type events, and let Evolve have the Full Sail University be there taped, and have it taped at Full Sail for like an hour for Evolve shows. Show them on like the WWE Network, and just for the underused talent to have them improve. So current Evolve could be what NXT used to be and recreate that magic.
Gotcha. So that's something, Rich, I wanted to ask you is like, do you think, because let's be honest, NXT is so much bigger now. It is legit the third brand. It's on every week on the USA Network, and I've heard plenty of members of the NXT roster say we're no longer developmental. We are the legit third brand. So even for the NXT, just their mindset that they are no longer developmental. With that being said, they still have a lot of trainees and people they just signed that need, quote, like a minor league system. So do you think Evolve can be that new foray for the WWE?
100%. And WWE's always had more than one. So, at one point in time, they used ECW and they used Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And then they used OVW and Deep South and a collection of others. So I think it makes sense to keep Evolve and even keep Gabe Sapolsky in his position.
Okay.
Right.
And use that as the feeder system, like Tommy was saying, especially if there's so much talent that you don't see there. There's like 120 people in NXT and we only see 20 or 30?
Yeah.
Right.
So get them some exposure where it's not going to embarrass them. But I'd also, since they have the library, I would make Evolve the way NXT used to be and make Evolve a WWE Network exclusive show.
That would be great.
So,
as far as Tommy said, kind of make Evolve what NXT used to be. Yeah, it'd be great. They can turn into like an hour weekly television show and tape a bunch of episodes in advance like they used to do with NXT before they had to go live on the USA Network. I think this could be really refreshing for, I think maybe hypothetically, let's say there's some people who were a little upset that maybe NXT's kind of gotten bigger than what it, it's not the same NXT as it once was. And so maybe you can kind of regenerate that passion for some of those hardcore marks out there as far as making Evolve that new, like kind of more underground wrestling show that's under the WWE umbrella. So I think that's all that is great ideas. And so if WWE was smart, they would just keep Evolve going, keep
they have a working relationship with Gabe Sapolsky, so they already trust him. So
Yeah.
they can let it die, or they can go and find someone else that they can learn to trust. But it's the wrestling business, and trying to find someone you trust isn't always easy.
And you could have like Triple H, be in charge of Evolve, and you could still have Gabe Sapolsky still booking the matches,
Yeah, I think it's proven that they have a good thing going, and so they might as well, even if it's WWE putting it on themselves. But I think this is a great way for them to utilize. It's just an extra resource. So, like you said, I think it'd be great. Keep the roster going. Your new NXT signees, have them work the shows there so they get more experience in the ring, and then maybe eventually turn into a 1 hour weekly show that people can tune in every week. Maybe film, like I said, a bunch of matches and a taping over the course of a weekend, whatever, once maybe crowds are back allowed inside an arena or something. But actually, Richard, real quick, before we kind of wrap it up for this story, Tommy just said he would think NXT should go on the road eventually. Do you think NXT is big enough now as a third brand that should eventually move on and go on the tour and do their live Wednesday night shows in front of a crowd in different arenas around the country?
Almost. I think they're getting there. I think part of the reason why they started doing takeovers in the same towns as the Big Four is to test out those markets. And it seems like every time that they've overexceeded, but we've gone to shows locally here where there's some empty seats, and I think they want to try to get those filled before they commit to anything, the cost-cutting measure. And if they have use of Full Sail, then that's great. But we've also seen now that they can run everything from the Performance Center. So,
yeah. So maybe I was kind of thinking. I mean, we don't know what the future holds for just live attendance in general. How many people might be afraid to go out and watch a live wrestling show in an arena or whatnot. I think before the pandemic, I think I was kind of envisioning maybe NXT can do like once a month, a live show on the USA Network from an arena somewhere else, and then maybe the next 3 weeks back home at Full Sail. So like just to test it out and see what the attendance is like for outside Full Sail, because you have the built-in crowd at Full Sail University, and then kind of test it out, and then if those start selling well, then maybe add 2 a month, maybe 3 a month, or and then eventually maybe they get so big that they can just do like 1 Full Sail show a month, and then the next 3 are elsewhere around the country. But
I think it would be worth it to treat it like it was the territory days, and maybe just make it an East Coast promotion for the time being.
Okay,
right.
And if there's a Survivor Series in the Bay Area, then you go and do your takeover over there. But otherwise, you run up and down the East Coast, and because that people are going to pop up for New York and Philadelphia. So
like you said, there's a lot of potential different ways for WWE and NXT to expand and move around and with Evolve now, there's a lot of different possibilities. So as a wrestling fan, there's I think a lot of great content and shows to come our way in the near future. Fingers crossed this happens sooner rather than later, but of course that depends on the pandemic and how that plays out.
Yeah.